second graders, Miss Uriel from Citizenship Academy, and today we are getting into lesson 4 in our unit 3 called the Ancient Greek Civilization. We're going to read a story today called the Olympic Games. Before we begin, let's go over some of our vocabulary though. So we have the word compete. Compete is a verb, so it's something that you do. To compete means to try very hard to outdo others in a task, a race, or a contest. So for example, every year Sally and Juan compete in their school's spelling bee to see who can win the most rounds. Say compete. Good. Our next word is determination. That's a noun. Determination is a firm decision to accomplish something. It takes great determination to finish reading your first chapter book by yourself. Say determination. Good. Now say grand. Grand is our word for today. Say grand. Grand is an adjective. It describes something. Grand means impressive in size, appearance, or general character. So building the Statue of Liberty was a grand accomplishment. Say grand. Good. Sacred. Sacred's a word we've been learning about. Sacred means holy or worthy of respect. So churches, temples, and mosques are considered sacred to people with those religious beliefs. Say sacred. Good. And our last word is victory. Victory is a triumph or a win. So the U.S. Olympic team, which is what we're going to be talking about today, claimed victory over the competing teams and won a gold medal. Say victory. Awesome. So today we are going to be talking about the Olympic Games. Have you ever seen the Olympic Games on television before? Have you ever heard of them? It's something that is still around today. So what we're going to learn about today are the first Olympic Games, and we're going to learn about who they were created for. So let's get into it. I read aloud the Olympic Games. Travelers came from all directions, from every part of Greece and from every Greek city-state. Some even came from distant places such as Egypt and Spain. Many traveled on ships. Some rode on horseback or in horse-drawn chariots. Many hardy souls walked the whole way, determined to reach their distant goal, for they believed they were on a holy journey. Rich and poor, carried in luxury and treading on foot, they came by the thousands to take part or watch the Olympic Games. The Olympic Games were held every 4 years at the site of Olympia and included contests in which the Greek athletes would compete. Because these games were a part of a religious festival or celebration to honor the gods, Zeus, they were considered sacred. In the first Olympic Games, there were only foot races or running races. Later, there became events like wrestling, boxing, racing horses and chariots, throwing heavy stones, discus, and throwing a javelin and a long spear. Among the travelers to the games one year were 2 men, Myron and Pindar. They made their way to the sacred site of Olympia in a private carriage, drawn by a team of horses and driven by a servant. The passenger in the brown cloak, you can see him in the picture there, Myron, was so muscular that the other travelers wondered, is he one of the Olympic athletes? But Myron was not an athlete. He was a sculptor who used his muscular arms and hands to carve statues out of bronze and marble. Myron was telling his companion, "Of course you are right, Pindar. I could just invite the champions to my home after the competition and carve statues of them there, but I want my statues to show the exact moment when a runner starts to pull ahead in the race, or the instant when a discus thrower is about to let go of a heavy stone and fling it down the field. So I prefer to see these Olympic events with my own eyes." His friend Pindar smiled and answered, "I, on the other hand, have written poems in honor of champions without ever having seen them compete. But I am less interested in watching a runner cross the finish line in the first place than I am in the effort and determination it took him to get there. It is this I admire, and it is this about which I write. Myron grinned. Well, your way works for you, just as my way works for me. Suddenly a voice called out, Pindar, what are you doing with that Athenian? Don't you know we Thebans are fighting a war with Athens? Turning, Pindar recognized a friend from his hometown of Thebes. Directing his carriage driver to the horses, Pindar said, My friend, you know that as all such conflicts are set aside here, everyone is guaranteed a safe passage going to and returning from the Olympic Games, so that all may gather and take part in this grand competition to honor Zeus and the other gods. The Olympic Games were more important than the conflicts the cities were having with each other, and these conflicts were put on hold so that everyone could gather safely for the sacred games. Pindar went on. Besides, Myron and I are artists. When I write a poem or when Myron carves a statue, our interest goes far beyond the boundaries of any one city. We honor these champions as examples so that we might encourage all Greeks to do the best they can with their lives. This is how we honor the gods who gave us our hearts, minds, and muscles. By the time Pindar and Myron reached Olympia, the greatest athletes in the Greek world had already gathered. Pindar and Myron looked excitedly at the running track, the long jump, and the vast or very large horse racing stadium. In the distance, thick clouds hid behind the peaks of Mount Olympus. All of the athletes were men. There were no events for women in the original Olympic Games, with the exception of horses and chariot races. If women owned horses, they were allowed to enter them in the race, but they were not the ones that rode the horses. Women were not even allowed to be present at the Olympic Games to see the horses win. Victory, which is a win or a triumph, was a source of great pride for all the winners in their home cities. An Olympic champion received a wreath of laurel leaves to wear atop his head. But more than that, he knew his name would live forever as a hero in his city's history. In fact, many cities awarded large sums of money to their champions. In some regards, things have not changed much in the 27 centuries since the first Olympics. Modern athletes, too, may even win fame, even if the greatest reason is to compete for the love of the sport. The Summer Olympics are still held every 4 years, but now there's also a Winter Olympics, with winter sports such as skiing, bobsledding, and figure skating. The location of the Olympic Games changes each time they have been hosted, such as cities in Seoul, Korea, Atlanta, Georgia, and Athens, Greece. Men, and now women, from all over the world travel to the chosen city to compete. Even if their countries are not getting along, people set aside their conflicts, just as they did in ancient days, in honor of the games. Even though many centuries have passed since Myron and Pindar traveled to the Olympics, they too are still remembered. Today, Myron's depiction of an Olympic champion, the discus thrower, remains one of the most famous statues in the world. The original statue was lost long ago, perhaps in a war or earthquake, but fortunately someone made an exact copy, so we can still admire Myron's work. As for the poet Pindar, the Greeks loved his poems so much that for centuries after his death, he was remembered by priests and priestesses at Apollo's temple. They would pray at closing each night, "Let Pindar the poet attend the supper of the gods." Later, when the Greek king Alexander the Great ordered Pindar's home city of Thebes to be destroyed in a war, Alexander commanded his soldiers, "But keep Pindar's house safe from the flames." Pindar's ideas about doing best with whatever talents we are given and about getting along peacefully with one another remain a part of our thinking today. In fact, we still call this way of seeing things the Olympic spirit. And that's the end of our Olympic Games story. So now you're going to go into your seesaw lesson and answer the questions. Remember, you can always come back to the story if you get stuck on an answer.